Welcome back to another episode of Hey Bucket Live. I'm your host, Sammy Glantz, and this week we have on a very special guest, one of the greatest softball players of all time, a three-time gold medalist, Leah O'Brien-Amico. Thank you so much for taking the time to hop on the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here with you all.
So before you were a three-time gold medalist softball player, you grew up in Chino, California. Can you tell us a little bit more about your upbringing and what got you involved in the game originally?
Yes, I was the first born in my family. So I had a younger brother and a younger sister. But because I was the firstborn, my dad loved sports. And so I grew up in Chino at a time where there wasn't a lot to do. It was definitely a lot of dairy lands and just a lot of free time. And so my parents got me involved in softball and soccer when I was about 6 years old. And I just fell in love with the game at such a young age. They started giving me pitching lessons at 8 years old. Back at a time, I tell people, it was a time where barely anybody took lessons. Like that was unheard of. I mean, we drove 45 minutes away, which is no big deal these days, but back in the day, again, that was just unheard of. And I went to a pitching coach who was working with athletes that were heading off to college to be pitchers in college. And so at 8 years old, I kind of got in that zone and fell in love with the sport of softball as well as soccer. Really was a tomboy. I just loved to be competing. I'm not a great loser. I hate to lose. And so that drove me. I mean, it's funny to look back and think how when I finished my career at 29 years old, that was still like the same mentality I had even when I was 8.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And like you speak of yourself not losing. Yeah, you never lost. You go on to win 3 national titles at Arizona and you play for Mike Candrea. What was that experience like? He's one of the greatest softball coaches of all time.
I love Coach Candrea. He is truly like a dad to me. That man, I'm so grateful. I wanted to get a college scholarship to compete at the highest level, to get an education paid for. I think he allowed me to see the world in a whole new way. I feel like, opened the door to even more opportunities. Having his not only instruction and knowledge of the game over me every day was the biggest blessing, but also the fact that he believed in me, that you could tell when we played for him, like he cared about us. He wanted us to win on the field and off the field. And, truly, I was a sponge. I tell people all the time, like, I know that so many of the intangibles were, the reasons I ended up becoming an Olympian. I was coachable. I was willing to put in the extra work, being a good teammate, but really like the leadership of Coach Candrea just absolutely was a huge factor in the success that I had. One of the things too I love about him, he had the ability to look at athletes, and he was never somebody that tried to make everybody cookie cutter the same. He would find your strengths and allow you to really just build off of those strengths. And he also loved to share his knowledge of the game with other coaches. I love that. He was never threatened by giving out more information. Just truly a champion in our sport. And I was so blessed to play for him.
So growing up in Chino, were there tons of offers that you had? Like I'm sure you had offers from everywhere, but what about Arizona made you want to go be a Wildcat?
So I had a few. It's funny because I had won nationals when I was 14 years old. I had won it when I was 16, which is when I actually got recruited. But at that time, most coaches were heading to the 18 internationals. Now it's so much younger, but back in the day, it was a lot different. So Arizona's assistant coach actually saw me, Larry Ray, because he had come to watch. And so I just had a handful. I was a pitcher at a time where a lot of schools were, kind of top heavy for pitching. So I laughed because when Arizona asked me to come and take a recruiting trip, as well as like Long Beach and Florida State, and there were a couple others, I knew I wanted to stay closer to home. But I went on this trip. It was my first time ever. I fell in love with not only the campus, the atmosphere, mostly the team, the players, the leaders on that team. It helped that Arizona had just won a national championship the year prior. That was definitely something I love to win, like we talked about. But really just kind of fell in love with the atmosphere and really felt at home. Now, I didn't know. I was like, what if every school is like this? And so I went to Long Beach State, and I had friends that were going to play there. That was a, big deal, but it just didn't have the same feel in my heart. So I kind of knew, okay. And that's when I committed. And it's funny because the year after I had committed was when a lot of the schools like UCLA, they had gone after all the pitchers, and a year underneath me. But it ended up working out in my favor to play at Arizona.
You touched on it briefly, but just the way that softball has changed, and especially in regards to recruiting and travel ball and all of the extra lessons and everything that comes along with it. What are some of the biggest differences that you've noticed about the game?
Yeah, I would just say, there's a lot more opportunities, which I love. There's a lot more knowledge, a lot more wisdom being shared. You can go anywhere on the internet and learn and really get, top knowledge and wisdom from watching the game. And it's so much more visible. So in that sense, you can see the best in the world. You can watch them compete and see what they do. Obviously because of that, the game has gotten, I think there's been a lot more parity, a lot more teams across the country are a lot stronger. You're seeing top players come out from across the country a lot more than you used to see. A lot of times in the past, it was definitely heavy California, maybe a few other spots, but not many. Now you're seeing it so much more widely spread out. I think also with technology, that's huge. I think back to some of the teammates I played with at Arizona, Laura Espinoza, Jennie Dalton, Leah Bratz, they held some of the top records in the home run numbers. And in my mind, I believe this day, they still would if they had the bats that the athletes are swinging now. So in that sense, again, that's a whole nother level because of the speed of the game. And that was always our working is you want to make sure that you're practicing at the fastest speed. So it almost seems like the game becomes slow. And a lot of teams, they practice slower and the game becomes too fast for them.
Do you remember what your practices were like playing for Coach Candrea? I know you also had the opportunity to play under him in the Olympics, but what is his coaching method? Like, how does he bring out the best in his girls?
you know, Preparation is everything. And especially again, for me as an athlete, I got all my confidence from how I prepared. And I will say his practices were the most organized things ever. Everything was detailed and we are going to focus on something and there's a time frame, but if we had to keep working on it, we would spread that back a little bit. But there was always purpose to our practice. It was never just come out and take some cuts, never come out and just let's run through some plays. There was specific things that needed to be worked on and a level of expectation that was kind of demanded, and there was teaching going on throughout that process. That's what I always loved. It was never just him getting frustrated and then that was it. There was always instruction behind what his expectations were. One of the things that I tell a lot of people, I do clinics around the country and I'll tell people, come in and watch a practice, because he would open up our practices to people and it is some of the most routine things, like over and over again. It's repetition. It's really becoming great. And I always think about our championship game in the 2004 Olympics with Natasha Watley at shortstop, and Lisa Fernandez was getting all these Australian hitters to ground out. And these were not all easy ground balls. I think these balls would have eaten up a lot of shortstops out there. But Natasha just absolutely made it look perfect, because I'm thinking that was our every single day, getting balls rolled to us every day in the infield, and then he would hit us balls and then he would speed it up, and that repetition really served us well because we were so grounded fundamentally, which a lot of people, they take that stuff for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. And for your career, so you end up being, I would say, one of the greatest postseason softball players of all time. In 1994, you set the Women's College World Series record that still stands today, where you hit 750. What was it about those high pressure situations that you were able to just settle in and perform even better?
It's funny because a couple things I can remember, a couple Women's College World Series where they would name me right before the World Series starts. They named the All-American teams. And so 3 out of my 4 years, I was named a first team All-American. And I remember this little thought, okay, now I'm going to go prove it. So the whole point is they're saying from what you've already done. But that's how I was wired. And this idea is I'm going to show that I deserve this award. That I would say, coupled with, I believe, the higher the level of play and the bigger, what was at stake. I really like got into this mode where I just shut off my thinking. And that is so crucial for athletes. If we were beating a team 10-0, I usually was not as good. My teammates would be hitting these home runs and I'd be like struggling. And I think that's where I'd get in my head a little bit. But when there was really the biggest stages was when like that thinking went out the door and I just literally focused in. And I can just remember some moments of being on the field in Oklahoma City and just watching the pitcher, and not one thought was going through my mind. But I'll tell you, I was zeroed in, even in the on deck circle, on that ball. And so those were the moments that I remember just how well I was seeing it. And I think it just was this another level of like adrenaline that kicked in when the moments and the pressure was on. And a lot of times, again, that's when I did tend to play my best.
Another moment that I have to bring up was in 1993 against UCLA. And not only UCLA, but Lisa Fernandez. You get the only hit that ends up being the only run. At that time, you didn't think that was going to be the only run of the game. But what was that moment like for you? Can you kind of walk us through that?
It's a moment I talk about almost every time I speak somewhere, because this moment literally for me was like, I feel like it was this bridge between everything I had worked for, and I get to this opportunity that's bigger than anything I've experienced. And yet that would be the thing that would propel me in my mindset to say, I want to be on the Olympic team when they named that softball would be in the Olympics in a few years. And, we had started the game, Amy Chelvold, one of the fastest hitters in the game and top hitters, slappers. She got on an air, she hit the ball to the shortstop. They threw it away. It was the first inning. Lisa's pitching. And really, we had played them multiple times that year. And the expectation was that UCLA is highly favored. And it's Lisa. Lisa barely ever loses. And so second hitter moves her over. Normally I would be in the 2 spot, but our second, the other hitter had gotten injured. And so they flipped us. And so then I come up and Lisa has me 0-2, and I'm fouling off pitches that were nowhere close. And then I get a drop ball, and I'll just never forget it because I got my hands down to the ball. I hit it past her head into center field. It wasn't deep. It hit one hop the center fielder, and she made a great throw. But Amy Chelvold, our runner, had just made this beautiful slide behind, back when catchers could block the plates. She made this beautiful slide behind Kelly Inouye Perez, who's now the head coach at UCLA, along with Lisa. And, that moment was so exciting. But like you said, it was the first inning. There was only one out. But our pitcher, Susie Parra, pitched a 2-hitter. Lisa didn't give up any more hits. And, we went on to win. And I'll tell you, I tell everybody, I was the first one. I was a designated hitter. So I was in the dugout when our pitcher threw the last strike, the last out. And somehow I made it from the bench to the pitcher and catcher. It was like the 3 of us before the first baseman, the third baseman. I don't know how, but I thought, this is it. This is all I need. My softball career is complete. But then I got to go for gold medals later.
Hey, not bad at all. How is it like being underneath that dog pile? You had 3 in your career at Arizona, but how was it playing on that stage and just, oh my gosh, I just couldn't even imagine just seeing what it is today at Oklahoma City. How is it like back then?
It's so awesome to see how it has grown. That's been so neat because I've been able to work with Westwood One and call the finals for, their radio and online. And I do think back to how fortunate I was. I was in 4 championship games. The one we didn't win, we got second place. And so every year our team was in the championship. And, I realized what a big deal it is to finish it. Like that first year against Lisa Fernandez in UCLA, we were not expected to win, but we found a way. And then, a couple of the other years we were expected to win, and we finished the job. And I just think that idea is like that mindset is, as a kid, you grow up and you win the national championship. And then, I did it 14, and then it's 16, and then 18. And now you're at the Women's College World Series. And so this is that elite level at that point. And, I think for me, like, again, it's that moment of celebration. I think all the hard work has been put in the fall. I think all the preparation is throughout the season, where you start and the goal is to just get a little bit better. You're going to have some dips throughout the season. You kind of need to work on some stuff. And then the goal is to kind of keep going back up and to finish high. And that's what we were able to do. And really, it was just such a mixed group. We had tall, thin, fast people, and then we had, short, quick people. That's what I love about our sport, is that everybody had a role. And most importantly, everybody bought into that role, because sometimes when you have that elite level, everybody's thinking, I deserve to play, I should be on the field, but everybody played their part.
Yeah. What advice would you have for kids that want to go play for an Arizona or want to go play for Coach Candrea? And I mean, just like you said, not everyone's going to have the opportunity to play, but what advice do you have for kids that want to fulfill those dreams?
I think any of the top programs, they're looking for those athletes that not only have talent, but they have a certain work ethic, they have a drive. They're looking for those kids who stand out in that sense. I tell people a lot of it is who is willing to outwork other people. To me, I really believe I played with people that were so much stronger and faster than myself, but I was going to battle. The mental game is crucial. And I would say start young, start getting into training. Look online for things that you can learn about the mental game and how you can be better. There's some great, obviously, teachers, Brian Kane, and there's different people. Jeff Jansen worked with us when I was on the team. We did, a lot with Ken Ravisa, Heads Up Baseball, that book. So the mental side, I think, is so crucial because I'll tell you, that's what starts to separate. Everybody can then put in the work. So you have that certain level, but then you have the next level of people who can handle the pressure, handle the ups and downs of our sport, because it can beat you up at times. And so, does that make you stronger, or does that make you want to run away from, the failure? And really you find those people when they're tested and who can rise in those pressure moments. And those are the athletes that these coaches are looking for.
That's so incredible that you guys were so out in front of it and working on your mental training and just kind of building all aspects of the game. Were you doing that at Arizona or was that with Team USA?
So we did it at Arizona, and you're right. It was kind of
Wow.
before everybody was doing it. And now you see it across the board at majority of, colleges. And the biggest thing that I can say about Coach Candrea, because I saw this when I played for him in the 2004 Olympics, as well as at Arizona. Coach Candrea is he is somebody who's had so much success, but he thinks I can always get better. So he's thinking, what are other sources? What information do people have that can help my team? And so he allowed Jeff to have his sessions with us, to meet with us one-on-one, to do team building exercises. Coach is like, that's not necessarily my area, so I'm going to let him work on that. He allowed the assistant coaches to take us, even if coach had, the most information out there. And so a lot of coaches can feel threatened by that type of stuff. When we were on Team USA, that's what he welcomed all kinds of nutritionists in. And again, a lot of schools are doing that these days. But the sports psychologist, and he would take advice from them, and he would, try to even have people come and, obviously every trainer that we had to make us physically stronger and do our conditioning. And so that's some of the things I would say. Coach Candrea was always open to any resources. And we were fortunate at Arizona to have Jeff Jansen on our campus. And so it's come a long way, and it is exciting. And I think that's another, when you talk about the differences, because the mental game is so crucial. And I think that's one of the things you see that's different these days. You'll hear so many programs talk about who they have helping them on the mental side.
Well, I mean, if Coach Candrea is constantly getting better and he's the greatest softball coach of all time, I mean, that just goes to show you that we can always just keep improving our craft. So what was that like playing for him at the 2004 Olympics? I mean, people say that was the real dream team, and I would have to agree. I mean, just going up and down that roster, we have Crystal Bustos, we have Laura Berg, Jennie, Finch, Jessica Mendoza. I mean, Natasha Watley. The list can go on and on. Like, what was that experience like?
It was it was the best. I played in the three Olympics: Atlanta, Sydney, and Athens, and I do have to say that was probably my favorite experience. Again, also playing for Coach Candrea. I feel like the preparation we put in, because our first Olympics we won the gold medal. The second Olympics we lost 3 games. We came back to fight and we did win the gold medal. But in Athens, Greece, coaches, his mentality for us was, we don't want to just win, we want to dominate. And so that's what we prepared for. And we went in just completely confident and ready. And we would train and practice because we knew the top programs in the world: Australia, China, Japan. But we knew Japan at the time was really probably our top competition. And they're the ones that will play out all these sneak plays. And so we would practice these defensive plays specifically for whatever they could do, as well as we would sometimes work our offense even to the way that they played defense. And so we were just preparing to be able to do whatever was needed to bring home that gold medal. You listed some of my teammates. Honestly, I loved, I was 29. I was getting ready to retire. I was a mom. My son was 3 at the time. And I feel so fortunate and so thankful to have played with those younger athletes that were coming in, that new generation, the Jennie Finches and the Tasha, like you said. I got to play twice with Crystal Bustos in the Olympics. And of course, we still had Lisa, Lori Harrigan, Laura Berg, who I was roommates for 10 years on Team USA with. And just what they brought to the table, I loved, just that youth and that excitement and the speed and the power. And then being able to kind of be on that other side to say, yeah, you're faster, but I'm also going to bring in that passion and that leadership and just the wisdom that I have gained, because I know when I made the team at 21 years old and I was playing with the Dot Richardsons and the Sheila Dowdys and the Michelle Smiths, I had so much to learn at college, as a top athlete. But it was like, okay, there's another level, because these women have been playing for 10 more years, 15 more years, and so I wanted to just learn how to keep getting better.
Yeah, you were like the seasoned vet at that point. I mean, and now you have this incredible team. What was that like? Did you just kind of take them under your wing and say, "Hey, this is kind of the USA way," or what was your role on that team?
Yeah, I think that, they definitely obviously had all the ability and the playing, but I just think, yeah, just kind of that standard that gets passed down. And so I think I'm a big like lead by example. We all have our different personalities, in terms of just the work that you put in and kind of keeping that expectation, that bar high and how we train and encouraging them. I was also I'm a big communicator. I'm very loud and positive generally. And so and I just love that idea of team and fight. And so, I know Jessica Mendoza and myself, we were kind of similar in that. And like, we like to talk things out. And so we'd be after a game and we'd be talking the game all the time, nonstop. Laura, it was my roommate, but she's more quiet, and so we kind of knew each other's personality, and we kind of would, just be drawn towards those that were more like us. And so, I knew when I could pick up Jessica what she needed, and, she would be there. And so, everybody's different. And I love that, because you learned, and then that's how you kind of led by that example on what worked for different people.
You briefly touched on it, but I mean, Jessica Mendoza and Jennie Finch and Natasha Watley, and just to see not only their growth from softball and bringing more attention to the game, but now they're groundbreakers in baseball, and just to see what they've been doing. How cool is that for you to see your former teammates now just absolutely tearing it up and being just great role models for females all over?
Yeah, I absolutely love what they are doing. Obviously they had all those physical abilities and the mental side to compete for Team USA and win gold medals. But I knew they would do great things off the field as well. And what I've loved watching all of it is what you see from them is really who they are. Like, I love that we can still get together and they're the exact same people, like, and just so genuine and passionate. And that's what I love about the sport of softball, because we're trying to make our sport continue to grow, but everybody is just grateful and thankful, but yet wanting to keep pushing the barriers down and make more opportunities. And so, I love to see Natasha doing what she's doing for inner city kids and going to Japan and opening up more opportunities and speaking. And then Jessica, obviously, with MLB and all her commentating. And, I love that she has just made so many firsts happen for women in sports, in baseball. And then, of course, Jennie. We've done a lot of clinics with Jennie through the years at Jennie Finch softball camps. And she's just always been truly the best ambassador for softball in every way, on and off the field. And so it really has been great to watch them just break down so many barriers.
I mean, imagine if they had social media now for when Jennie Finch was on the field. Like, she would have been probably like the most followed softball player on Instagram at the time.
I know, it's so different. And that's what's been so funny to watch those types of things happen and the notoriety, and you're like, oh yeah, if you went back a number of years, it would have been so different for so many athletes.
Oh my gosh. So, what would be your favorite on-field memory? I know you have thousands to choose from, but do any kind of stick out to you?
A couple. So obviously the Lisa memory is huge. And that's something that I always think of, because again, that was really what gave me the belief. like if I can get a hit off Lisa and we won the World Series, like I can be on the Olympic team. I would also say even in my last Olympics, getting to the championship game and just with what that team was accomplishing. I had been struggling at the plate a little bit. I was playing first base, but it was like, okay, but you do what you can. And in that first inning, we ended up playing Australia for the championship game. And, I ended up getting a hit off of Tanya Harding and got a hit. And then Bustos comes up and just launches the ball, like just crushes it. And I just remember at that point, we had just started the game and I was like, this is going to be a fun game. Like, cause we were, you're used to battling and I just knew like our team was prepared and it was truly, we won 5-1. It was the perfect finale. And it came at a time, I always remember that a couple of reasons. Again, I had left my son at home while we were, finishing competing for a gold medal. It was a long time away from him, but being so excited to be a mom and to be able to still be out there. And then Coach Candrea's wife, Sue, had passed away a month earlier suddenly of a brain aneurysm. And so Coach joined us, and that man, I don't even think he slept that entire Olympics. But just to see him and my heart, like all of us wanted just him to be lifted up in that moment as well. We just care so much about him. And so in that moment, in that last game, I felt like that was just like, okay, everything we've worked and prepared for, like this is it. And he's led us all this way. And this is just something that I'm never going to forget. So crossing that plate, Bustos coming in and just celebrating with our team at the end of that Olympics was truly the best.
What an absolutely surreal moment for you and your teammates. It's just so powerful. You guys were able to come up clutch like that. How cool is it to see now in 2021? Hopefully Olympics will be back. Do you have any advice for the girls who are going to be going out in there and playing and representing Team USA this year?
Yes, I am so excited for them. And I know a lot of them and I've been in contact with some of them. And really, like, I just know that all their preparation, and I heard a couple of them say that recently, that just this X year's kind of ended up being a blessing because it gave them more time together and getting to know each other on a deeper level. And I think that is so crucial because we all know when it comes down to it, it's more than just putting, the ball in play. Obviously, you have to do those things, but especially as female athletes, there's so much more at play with team camaraderie and team chemistry and everybody kind of playing their role in the support. And, I've seen just that growth for them. And so the biggest thing for them is they have had those moments. They have been tested. I think that's a very good thing because they know what's at stake. And I believe they are ready heading into the game. So for them, it's more just no doubt and just stay full steam ahead. Like it's all about being in attack mode and just playing to win, to dominate and not holding anything back. I think that's crucial because sometimes in the big moments you can get like, okay, we don't want to mess up, but you cannot, that's not what got them there. And I know that they're going to stay in that mentality.
So back in June, you were named to the greatest college softball players of all time. Like there was a team that came out, you were on the all-time list that ESPN put out. What does that mean for you to be still remembered as one of the greatest to ever play the game?
Yeah, it's a huge honor and shocking at times. And I think because I am the hardest on myself, sometimes I didn't always see it that way. That's kind of what drove me, was always like, I'm going to even be better and I can even be better than that. And so it's truly an honor when I look at the names of the people on that list. And, I just feel so fortunate again. That's the biggest thing, is just the opportunities that who I played with, they made me better. Playing under Coach Candrea, he made me better. Coaches even growing up, I really truly got to enjoy the game. And I like to tell people, you don't have to play for somebody who is so strict and hard on you, and not hard on you, but just kind of the coaches that tend to yell and demean. You can have fun and win too. And that's what I was fortunate to play in, those environments. And because of that, I just felt like I could blossom. I could stay with my strengths. When I started to struggle, I had my coach with wisdom right there to keep believing in me and to get me back on the right path. And, I just feel so fortunate to have been really in healthy environments, to just enjoy every moment. And I really believe that's why I was able to come through when it counted and to be on that stage with the athletes around me.
Wow, that is a feeling that I think every softball girl would ever want to just experience, standing on that podium and representing your country. What an unbelievable feeling. And you got to do it so many times, and winning gold with 3 times is absolutely unbelievable. All right. Well, this is a Hey Bucket signature that we like to do. It is our speed round. I'll just ask you 3 quick questions and we'll see what we get. All right, here we go. All right, so first question. I know you're a California girl, but are you a beach girl or snow?
Oh, I love the beach. One of my favorite places.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a go-to spot in SoCal?
I do. And what's so funny is since my kids were little, we take groups out there because it's the longest walkway to get to the beach, and then it's usually wide open. So yes, it's in Newport Beach.
So pretty. Absolutely stunning. All right. What is one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
The advice I would give is just to enjoy every moment and not be so hard on myself. It's hard because I'm thankful because that's what drove me in many ways. But I think I probably could have given myself a little bit more grace. And I'm finding even at this stage of life, it's important no matter what we do to have that mindset to make sure to know, like, again, we're always a work in progress. We're always learning. We're always growing. So when something doesn't go right, like, keep at it. And that's eventually what I ended up doing, but I think I could have given myself a little more grace.
Yeah, I think and even speaking now, it's okay. You are one of the greatest softball players of all time. We can say it. We can say it with confidence.
Yeah.
All right. Last question for you. Did you learn any new quarantine hobbies? Did you pick up anything over the past year?
Well, okay. I mean, I ended up walking my dogs a lot more than they've ever been walked. That and hiking, definitely. I've done it, but I did it way more. So that was a positive. And then by the end of the year, I actually ended up writing a little devotional, like a year-long devotional. I'd had the idea in, I think, March, but I didn't start it until October. And I should have started a little sooner, but I did finish that just in the very beginning of January. So that is kind of a new thing.
I love it. Can't wait for hopefully we can all read it or get a little blurb out of it. I know it would be probably helpful for all of us to learn from you. So well, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us today, Leah. I know that was just so incredibly powerful, and I mean, I learned so much from you, and thank you just for continuing to inspire all of us. You are just so incredible. So thank you for all that you've done for the game.
Well, thank you. I'm excited that Hey Bucket is doing these types of interviews, and excited for you, Sammy, and what you're doing. Just again, taking what you learned in sports and softball and using that now to make a difference in this time of your life, in this season in your career. So it's exciting. I'm meeting people like you as well inspires me, because that's what it's all about. All of us just going and using our gifts and our talents and allowing the world to keep seeing it.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. That was really sweet. I wasn't expecting a compliment from you, but thank you. That just made my day. Thanks for watching. For more content like this, be sure to check out fastpitchfilms.com. I'm your host, Sammy Glantz. See you next time.